Hi, Ronnie.
Hi, how are you? Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending. I'm Ronnie Hagin, CEO of Datatex, an industrial engineer with over 40 years experience in global textile and apparel market, mainly in the ERP business, supporting global textile market in producing, implementing, and supporting ERP. I started Datatex after working 6 years in the industry, and Datatex is a joint venture between a Swiss textile consulting group and a leading Italian software house. We've kept the same focus still today after 35 years of starting the company. So I think we're pretty unique in the scenario of ERP companies. We're private and been with the same focus and same ownership for 35 years this year. We've become the world leader in providing ERP solutions for the textile and apparel industries. What I'd like to speak today is a little bit about the market, the solution required to help textile companies survive and prosper in this market, and then about a little bit about the solutions that are required, technology, and a little bit about Datatex. So I'd say the market these days, when we speak about textile and apparel, probably very similar to other markets, but still very unique because we speak about fashion. We've been going through a process of change, and I'd say the changes that we're looking at is faster fashion with more collections per year. People were speaking like Zara and Marks and Spencer about 12 collections a year. Perhaps things are changing now a little bit towards less collections, but still more products. The market is requiring sustainability, and that has a lot of aspects, and that requires a discussion on its own, but basically sustainability requires us to be under much tighter controls, both in the way we run our business and in the way we source our products and in the way we produce our products, which makes it, I'd say, very challenging from a systems point of view, and I'm coming from a systems point of view. The other point that's becoming very, very important these days are the circular economies. That means we need to be using recycled fibers, and some companies like Nike today require 30% of the raw material, that means fibers put into a product, to be proven recycled material, which is again a challenge, mainly for the production, but also, of course, for the system supporting the production and proving that 30% is really waste. Now we speak about, if not more collections, larger collections, which means more products and color combinations and demands for the use of waste, shorter runs, and higher quality. In addition to all that, the market is requiring more and more the ability to trace everything up to the level of the farm from which the bale of cotton came, or the animal from which the wool was shaved off, if we speak about wool, and transparency. People want to see and be able to control. In this area of traceability, we see more and more movement. It's a beginning only towards the blockchain world. That means whatever is reported becomes fixed, cannot be changed, and is extremely reliable. And more of the big chains and the big consumer chains are requiring to start looking at blockchain to be very accurate and extremely available for this blockchain, for the blockchain systems. Now, in addition to these trends that have been going, I'd say, for the last even almost 10 years, the market has recently become even more demanding. and totally disrupted due to the recent three crisis events. One is the high costs of transport that we've already forgot, but the transport crisis started actually way before the COVID. The second was the COVID vicious circle of lockdowns, restrictions, hurting both demand, which is the end consumers, and supply, producers and raw material producers, creating shortages of raw materials to many of our industries. And extremely recently, the effect of the Ukraine war yet to be felt and understood. I don't think anybody understands yet or can predict what are going to be the consequences of what's happening these days or these hours in Russia and Ukraine. For sure, we're already hearing of a very, let's say, of a stop, it's not a drop, in the consumption of high fashion goods that Russia were a very large consumer of. So the high fashion producers in Italy, for example, are already beginning to feel this lack of demand, or not lack, this top demand on the very high-end fashion market. Now, all this has really resulted in a demand for much shorter lead times. That means people cannot predict, therefore cannot put in orders well in time, and therefore needs extremely short lead times. And people are beginning to speak very loudly, even I'd say, on nearshoring. You see American companies moving production from China, for example, to Central America. And also we see more and more onshoring, meaning that people are beginning to construct textile industries and apparel, even apparel, in the US, in Europe, and so forth. So I think the whole market needs to be very much aware of these things and be able to sustain the competitive environment, which is becoming actually more and more competitive in order to stay profitable. I'm not speaking about in order to exist, but I think the purpose of all businesses is to become more profitable. And for that, we really need optimized ERP solutions, providing fast and accurate solutions for all the above. So I think this is where the ERP comes in. And what we've seen, first of all, the reason that we've been around for so long is the need of this very specific industry, or for a unique system that can serve it without customizations and without big changes in the standard. And we need to accurately fit reality and eliminate manual, and for me, Excel is manual calculations. You've seen a lot of companies going for the big brand ERPs like SAP, Infor, Oracle even. And what we see when we go into these companies and we do a very in-depth search of what's happening, we see that the accounting is accounting. So of course they excel, and these solutions are excellent accounting and very well accepted by the auditors. But when we go one level below, which is the core of the business, when we speak about planning, when we speak about costing, when we speak about production control, quality control, we find people have either created their own systems. So there's a lot of island solutions. So one system for spinning, one system for weaving, and so forth, or actually feed the big ERPs with manual Excel sheets or manual calculations. And this actually makes the need of a specialized system even more important under the conditions that I've spoken before. Remember, the textiles is actually coming on with an inverted production pyramid. We start from very few raw materials like cotton, wool, synthetic fibers, and we finish with a huge amount of SKUs if we take color, size, and style, and even packaging comes into play. So we come to millions of SKUs out of one bale of cotton. which makes it very unique from an industry point of view and from a solution point of view, in order to be able to manage this, let's say, interesting, I don't want to say complex, but interesting way of production. Now, I'm not going to give you the total story of why textile is different, what it needs, but I'm going to touch on a few points. And let's start from the coding structure. In textiles, yes, the end product is an SKU, but when we produce, it's actually style, color, size, finish, package, and so forth. And then in the same vertical production, we also have fibers, which have their denier and other characteristics included in the product code. We have yarn that is very, very specific. It's not enough to know how many kilos of yarn I have, but I need to know how many packages. And it's not enough to know how many packages, because I need to know what type of support these are on, because some packages can be put into the dyeing machine because they're metal or plastic, and some cannot be because they're carton, but they can be used on the knitting machines or on the looms. So it's very, very important to be able to manage both our products and our packaging and our inventory units. When we speak about bill of material and routing, if we want to manage an environment that can be really accurate and maintainable, what we need to introduce a rule-based BOM and routing system, meaning not every final SKU that you see on the market has a BOM and routing of its own or predefined on its own. The system should be able to predefine those routes and bill of materials based on a set of rules. And I'll give you one example. Every garment that we wear has a washing label, has a wash label. And usually those wash labels are very standard, and what the producers do, they have two types. One is black and one is white. The black goes on dark colors, the white goes on light colors. Now, if this label is an SKU of its own that goes into the bill of material, I would need to include it in all my thousands of combined bills of materials of style and color. In a rule-based system, you basically put in a rule that light colors require a white label, dark colors requires a black label. Then you have a characteristic defined on the color of each product, which says if it's dark or light. And the system then basically builds the bill of material as needed, when needed, without having to predefine this label SKU for each end product. So this is just one very simple example. We then go into dyeing recipes, finishing recipes. They're all entities of their own, which we want to avoid being calculated manually and fed into the system, but calculated with all the criteria needed of waste, of run lengths, etc., right on the ERP system itself, rather than on site systems, which then have to be integrated or managed manually. We speak about print design, and we speak about even the more complex world of weave and knit patterns. We speak about production orders with multiple products. For example, if we producing golf shirts, we have the collars and we have the bodies, and these two items, which are actually two SKUs during the production, have to be dyed on the same machine. So again, we need to have a production order with multiple products inside, attaching a recipe to the total weight, because the collars, for example, are counted and managed by units, and the body is managed by kilos or meters. So again, very unique situation that we need to manage with a dedicated system. Item type that have different packaging entities which must be managed. For example, rolls. And a fabric roll has different weight and different lengths with the different ratio between roll to roll, because we speak about something which is elastic, something which is difficult to measure and weigh. And therefore, when we keep the rolls in the inventory systems, we need to know both the length and the weight of the specific roll. And no two rolls are equal. We speak about beams, which are work in process. We speak about cones that I mentioned before. Everything has to be lot controlled, and then everything can be moved and managed and stored in cartons and pallets. So even when we go into the warehouse systems, you need a very dedicated system to be able to manage it all with one platform. When we speak about scheduling, there are very specific scheduling rules in this industry. For example, when we dye, we need to dye light to dark on the color side. When we weave or knit, we want to make sure that we schedule products one after the other in order to minimize drawings and machine setups and so forth. So this industry is really different. And I think the biggest proof is with all the giants around us, like SAP and Oracle, as I said before, and Microsoft, Datatex still exists and actually is booming at the moment because of this changing industry requirements and the very specific needs of this industry. Now, all this, in order to stay profitable, and as I said before, we need to have a very detailed, fast, and accurate planning and costing, along with a very detailed quality assurance system that takes the production from receiving supplier orders through the production process with different laboratory and quality requirements right to the finished product. These three elements, which are core in our opinion, which is planning, costing, and quality assurance, should be, let's say, the main part of an ERP. All the rest can be added on. But if the system cannot do these three elements and need to be heavily customized or manually managed, then the whole idea of ERP becomes a reactive, post-mortem type of systems. Okay, so how did I do last month? But in our opinion today, a modern system should deal much more in what should I do next month rather than what did I do last month. And in order to meet the market demands and stay competitive and, of course, profitable, this has to be really well managed. Now, in this industry also, especially in Pakistan and countries like yourselves, where you actually supply to foreign markets, the fact that very often we have very little, if any, repeat orders of the same items. This strengthens the fact that we need to have all the above in order to be very proactive rather than reactive. We have to be able to predict costs and production rates, yields, and quality levels, minimizing overproduction and excess redundant inventory, while, of course, producing enough to be able to supply the demand. So it's really a juggling game. And when you take all this over the hundreds of thousands of SKUs that we are required to produce these days, because of the trends that I've described before, this really becomes an important factor of looking at the system that can cover these functions and make the companies more successful without rewriting code. Now, another big challenge of these days is not the market, not the application or the functionality that we've just discussed, but technology. And today, the right system should be on the right and correct state-of-the-art technology. What we see more and more now, that the market needs higher level of user interface adoption because everybody is on the internet, everybody is on the web, everybody is browsing, I don't say most of the day, but a big part of the day. And the ERP system at work should be very similar in order to be easier to use and more familiar and make the people more familiar with it. Now, on top of that, we've got the cybersecurity issue, which actually is becoming more important day by day. So we're speaking about web-based systems, using browser clients. Systems or parts thereof should be available on the cloud or on-premise, because in some situations, cloud solution cannot be acceptable or cannot be executed because of geography, because of politics, and because of environment. So a lot of times we find ourselves having a cloud-based solution, but with customers wanting to run it on-premise. And I think this is very important, not to limit the users only on the cloud. Cloud should be available. Cloud is probably the best solution today to cybersecurity. But as I said, some geographies, some politics would lead companies to go onto an on-premise solution. We also speak, and that's very important, on a high availability MES system, because while being cloud and web-based and very much dependent on external providers of communication, production has to run. In order to do that, we need the production to run on an MES system, which is the manufacturing execution system, which is disconnected from the cloud, disconnected from communication providers, and is on-site. Now, this system should be seamlessly connected in real time to the ERP as long as it's available. But when it's not available, the system should be able to produce, receive goods, and ship without being connected to the ERP. And that is doable. We've done it, and we are doing it every day. And finally, I think it's very important these days, because of the numerous available solutions for the infrastructure, to have systems that are open, leaving you open to use hardware, databases, operating systems, and even browsers. Because if I have some of my users on Apple using the Apple operating system, and some other users on Chrome, and some users that prefer Edge, the system should run. We should not limit the clients on any, just as we don't require the clients to load anything, we do not want to limit the users in a specific organization on the platform that he uses or the browser that runs the system. And this also allows us to go into shop floor functions using handheld type of clients without having to write new programs. So I think this is very important. Having said all that, the availability and the use of a standard system becomes even more important, because we are not going to update with new releases having tons of customizations. So that's why the system that you're running should have a minimum, and minimum I speak less than 5% customized code, in order to be able to upgrade once or twice a year, not only for the functionality, because functionality usually 2-3 years, you're good to go. But when you speak about cybersecurity, when you need to adapt the system to the latest database versions or the latest browser versions and so forth, very, very important to minimize the number of customizations so that you can upgrade as often and as fast as needed. And that's where we come into more and more importance to industry-specific applications. Because industry-specific applications, like the company that I run, basically allow you to minimize the customizations using code, but you should be able to customize the system exactly to the way you want to run your business without changing the code, making it what we call upgradable. There's a comment, but I can't read it. It's very blurred. So if somebody can tell me what the comment is, will help. Now, something else that comes into play, I'd say in recent years, is the global market. Textile has become very global, and most leading industry players are moving towards owning global supply chains, meaning we have customers that run manufacturing environments in different countries. And that actually requires a very, very detailed and I'd say interesting, sometimes even leading to complexity, multi-language. We have to run multi-companies on the same database, the same system, multi-divisions, multi-units of measurement, multi-currencies, and recently we've also provide a system which can manage different time zones on the same database. That means if I have one company in the US producing goods, and one company in Karachi, and another company in Hong Kong, all of them should be served by the same database and should manage their own time zones. So this is becoming also a very important factor in selecting your system or in running your system, that it has to be global. Coming to an end, I'd like to speak a little bit about Datatex, where we come into the picture. So Datatex has it all for what I've just described, for the apparel, for textile, apparel, and similar industries, including fashion, technical, automotive, floor covering, home textiles, workwear, activewear, and more. So any industry, and now we've got an implementation, for example, in the piping industry, that for a company that produces make-to-order pipe connections and very sophisticated or spatial piping, we found that the variability in products and production routes actually justify a system like ourselves, and we've been very successful implementing over there. One thing also which we find extremely important is one system. Our system can serve the full supply chain from sheep to shop. Basically, from the raw material, which is usually fiber in our industry, or we have some customers producing the fiber, so it's from the polyester chips, right to the shop. And today, some of the producers are also creating their own brands and are selling it at their own brand shops. And
so, Ronnie, we are actually running out of time. So I just wanted to share with you.
Give me 3 minutes and I'm over. Okay, so this is from idea to product also, because product development process in the fashion industry is very interesting. It's very important. This has to be integrated into the system. And of course, covering the full functionality on the supply chain, from sales to purchasing, receiving to shipping, including commission and third-party manufacturers, which also play a very important role, both in private label or brand manufacturing. Datatex, as I said, we have our own ERP suite called Now, Network-Oriented World. We serve customers from 5 offices and local business partners around the globe. We have customers in 5 continents, 47 countries, which gives us actually the management process benchmarks to keep enhancing both technology and applications. So thank you very much for your time. I hope I managed to give you some important or some useful information. If you have any questions, you can either email them to me, or if there's question time now or later, I'll be happy to listen and answer.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. It was a wonderful discussion.